everybody. Welcome to the Sweat here on a nice Monday morning. Hopefully, wherever you are, the weather is better than it is for us here in New England. But, you know, one last day of February before turning the calendar to March. It's a good opportunity for us to celebrate all things NBA, NHL. We'll do a little college basketball, mix in a bunch of stuff. And without further ado, we'll get to our analysts here. We got Matt Meiselman, Julian Edlow, both, of course, DraftKings contributors, as well as DK Nation junior sports editor, Chinmay Vaidya. Welcome to the program. How are you, man?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk.
Well, hopefully you'll still be willing to come back after all of this is said and done. You never know with Mize and Jules here. Let's get into it, guys. NBA building blocks. And of course, if anybody has any thoughts, comments along the way, drop them in our chat, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. We're going to break down tonight's best DFS and sportsbook plays in tonight's 7-game NBA slate. Let's go with which guard that you are going to build around for DFS tonight. Chinmay, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I like two plays here tonight, Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, either or, whichever you're feeling. The Hornets defensively are ranking the bottom 5 in the following categories: points per game allowed, field goals made allowed, 3 points made allowed, and they actually rank worst in opponent assists per game allowed. So both guards are looking really good tonight for Milwaukee. Whichever your preference is between Holiday and Middleton, that's the guy that I would go with.
Mize, do you like one of those guys?
Yeah, I think they're all right. I'm a little worried about a blowout for that game, honestly. The Hornets on the back-to-back, but I do think it's a really good spot for Milwaukee. The other game I'm looking at, though, is the Memphis-San Antonio game, where the Spurs defense without Derek White, specifically against guards, whether it's been the same or not, I mean, they've rested players, so I don't know if we can use the recent stats on them that much, but Derek White's the guy that would have guarded Ja Morant. So I think Morant is a really good play here. Murray himself at 10,600 is fine, but Morant's actually $900 cheaper. And I think this matchup is maybe stronger than the season numbers would indicate. So yeah, paying up for Morant or Murray, I think this is a good game to look to stack to. This could be another one. People are a little worried of a potential blowout. So maybe going the other direction here. And the Grizzlies may be shorthanded a little too. Brandon Clark and John Conchar are in the injury report. So it could be a boost for everyone on this team.
Jules, assuming he plays, Fred VanVleet's in a hell of a spot, only $8K for Toronto.
Yeah, not a bad spot for Fred VanVleet. I'm actually going to go to the opposite side of the matchup. Keep it kind of simple here. Go with a mid-price play. I like to spend up at forward and center. So I'm going to go with 5,900 for Seth Curry. You know, the analysis is pretty elementary. You know me, Kaufman. I'm not very smart. I like to keep it simple. Kyrie is playing the road games. He's not playing the home games. He put on a show on Saturday night. But you have Seth Curry coming down in salary, yet returning to play at home. So no Kyrie. Not the best matchup against Toronto. I'll say that. But I think just the amount of volume and usage that will now go to Curry with Kyrie off the floor gives him a pretty good boost. So he still managed 30 DraftKings points with Kyrie on the floor. But, you know, a couple of those games without Kyrie, 38.75 DraftKings points against Sacramento, over 35 against the Celtics in a blowout loss. So I think Curry's a pretty safe play and very affordable.
Let's stay with you here, Jules, and look at the forwards to build around, since you said you want to pay up there. I think it's interesting because, you know, obviously you have Giannis and he's 12K. You got DeMar DeRozan at 12 too, but it seems like, again, some of the mid-range guys, whether it's Anthony Edwards, Evan Mobley, Wendell Carter, guys like that, Pascal Siakam, they seem to be in better spots. What's your motivation?
So I like Giannis a lot. I didn't use him here because I figured somebody's got to be using him. He's expensive, 12,000, but he averages like close to 70 DraftKings points, I think, this year in 3 games against the Hornets. The Bucks have some losses to the Hornets. So it's a good spot for Giannis, no doubt. I'm going with Jimmy Butler, 8,900 against his former team, the Chicago Bulls. Again, I just like when guys are off the floor. No Kyle Lowry, personal absence in this game. That turns Jimmy Butler into more of the point guard. They kind of share those duties, scatter their minutes when they're both in, but no Lowry. I expect a lot more ball handling for Jimmy Butler, and that to reflect in his in his stat line when it comes specifically to the assist department. He's been, lower than usual lately with assists. We haven't seen him get up in double digits for a while, but this is a game I think he can do that and get a double-double.
Chinmay, which way are you going forward?
So I'm actually going the other way in terms of find the values here and go with some of the mid-range guys. A couple guys that I like Buddy Hield and O'Shea Brissett for the Pacers. Hield has actually been good on rebounds and assists. He's not just that shooter that we expected him to be when he comes to Indiana. He's at 21, 6, and 5 since joining the Pacers, and he's still shooting the ball really well, about 50% from the field, 37.5% from deep. Brissett in the last 2 games has really come on with some extended minutes. So if you don't quite have the juice for Hield, then Brissett might be the guy to go with.
Sees a couple of guys torch my Celtics, Matt, and he's coming in hard on his first show.
That was not a fun Celtics game yesterday, was it? Yeah, I don't know what's happening. The Celtics beat the best teams and then lose to the worst teams. But I actually do like the Pacers a lot here potentially. I think that after that win yesterday, there's a good chance we see a few Pacers guys sit out this one in Orlando. This is a team that doesn't have anything to play for anymore. I don't think they're realistically even trying to get into the playoffs. And Malcolm Brogdon's been dealing with injuries all season. I'd be very surprised if he plays. But this seems like a good spot to get Tyrese Halliburton or Buddy Hield a night off too, actually. If one of them's out there without the other, I think they're both good plays, but we could get a situation where neither of them plays. And then we get the Lance Stevenson show because he actually didn't play yesterday. I could see him back in the lineup and then maybe someone else sitting. So this is a very interesting situation to me. I don't think we know exactly yet what this Pacers team will look like tonight. Brogdon's the one for sure that I think winds up sitting. So in the forward department, a lot of these guys are guard and forward eligible, but I think there's a lot of potential plays from this team.
Well, and as we segue to centers, there are a lot of guys who are forward and center eligible, obviously, Matt. Some of the guys that I've already mentioned, whether it's Giannis or Siakam or, Mobley, Carter, guys like that. You also have that you could mix in, just some higher priced guys that are available on the slate, Domantas Sabonis, Karl Anthony Towns as well. Who stands out to you?
I think Sabonis is the one that makes the most sense to pay up for. He'll probably be somewhat popular, but this is such a good matchup against Oklahoma City. And they don't have a lot of their best defensive players playing. I know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came back a couple of games ago, and that's the player that makes headlines. But guys like Mike Muscala and Lou Dort and Kendrick Williams not playing, that just makes the defense so much worse across the board. And then SGA coming back doesn't help the defense either. I think we should expect to see much higher scoring games from OKC going forward. And we have seen those games recently. They played Indiana in overtime, but that game was really high scoring before it even got there. Same with the prior game against the Suns. So I just think this is a really good spot for Sacramento. Sabonis probably plays as the center too, because Rashawn Holmes has been out. So he may spend the entire game that he's on the court as the center. There's just so much potential for him to score fantasy points. And the Kings aren't good enough necessarily to be worried about a blowout either. So this really sets up well for the Kings and Sabonis in particular.
Who do you like, Chinmay?
I agree with Matt. I think Sabonis is a nice play, averaging 19 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists since joining the Kings at the deadline. Holmes is questionable with a back issue, so a spot for extended minutes for Sabonis as well. As an alternate play, not quite as pricey, I like Jaron Jackson. I know he's struggled since the All-Star break, but I do think he's due for an uptick against a Spurs team that struggles to defend on the interior. So Jaron Jackson Jr. could be the alternate play if you don't want to pay up for Sabonis.
All right, Jules, why don't you give us your center?
Sabonis was my guy here. Matt already pretty much covered him. It's too good of a matchup. OKC's going way downhill. Like you said, a lot of their top defenders are out. We saw Sabonis, it was with Indy, but we saw Sabonis already go over 70 DraftKings points in the matchup specifically. And again, it's the Kings. So if people are blowing out the Thunder, if there's a team that can't, it's the Kings. I expect it to be an up and down game and still a close enough game for Sabonis to keep going off.
Okay, so now we get to really open things up. Regardless of whatever position that you want to look at, we need the top value option tonight. Matt, we'll go right back to you. I'll tell you, a guy that I really like is Brandon Goodwin, but you guys are the ones that are actually paid to do this. So who stands out?
No, I don't think there's really a difference between us because I'll take Goodwin. I that's who I want to go with. I think it's a really good spot for a couple of reasons. He played 38 minutes last game, and the Cavs don't have other guards because not only are Darius Garland and Karis LeVert dealing with injuries, so is Rajon Rondo. And I don't think that we just get Tim Frazier stealing the point guard minutes. I think Point Chetty was just a failed experiment at the times this season when they went with it. So I would expect that Goodwin plays big minutes again. And he also wasn't great last game. I think it was 2 for 11 from the field, and he only put up 24 fantasy points. So the people who are game log watching might look at that and say I didn't get that much out of him, and maybe that keeps his ownership down. But 38 minutes for a guy that's 5,200 and will have the ball in his hands a lot. There aren't really a lot of ball dominant players on Cleveland. So I think we should expect a much better game from him. And the matchup isn't bad either against Minnesota. So I do actually like that call. Yeah, we can switch roles. That's fine.
That's all right. So Jules, unless you also like the Cavs point guard, who are you going to? Who are you gravitating to?
Yeah, I had 3 names circled here. Goodwin was one of them. Jeremy Lamb with the Kings for similar reasons to Sabonis was another one. And who was the last one? You made me forget, Kaufman.
I'm sorry.
Gabe Vincent.
I was going to guess Gabe Vincent.
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
Of course you were going to guess Gabe Vincent.
You should have let me.
Same reasons as Butler. You plug him in for Lowry, getting a lot of those point guard minutes. Every time I watch Gabe Vincent play, not that, the eye test has anything to do with VFS, but he impresses me. He's earned his minutes, and he should get a lot more with Lowry off the floor. So, yeah, I think Vincent's in a good spot here.
Okay, Chinmay, how many lists or names are on your list, rather?
I only have a couple, both for the Heat. Gabe Vincent was obviously one of the choices there with Kyle Lowry out, but I also think Tyler Hero is a good matchup in this spot. He's likely to get the start here with Lowry out. And even though Butler does handle a lot of the ball with Lowry sideline, at least he did during that stretch, I think the Heat want to get Hero as many opportunities as possible. And I know the Bulls' perimeter defense, the Sunmu, the matchup can be quite intimidating for people, but I like Hero in this spot. He's shown that he's not afraid to go up against some of the top defenders, and he's ready to take on that challenge. I think he's set for a big game here tonight.
All right, we'll wrap up this portion of the program, the NBA portion, looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook and the 7-game slate. And Jules, will go right back to you here because you so regularly tweet out your bets on a daily basis. People should follow you, check out your advice. Who are you building that bet slip around this evening?
Thank you for pointing that out, Adam. I would encourage you to
welcome.
Follow me and make money. But another person that I often talk with about this is Matt, who's just shy and doesn't tweet them out, but he does very well as well. I was hoping you were going to go to Matt first because I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to bet on this card. If you're you should have in mind what you're going to bet at, 11-12 Eastern. But if you're actually betting them, you're setting yourself up for who knows what, because we know follow DK Live, get all the news throughout the day, and crazy things are going to happen. Here's what I have circled, though. I do play the first quarter, first half trends. The Heat have been a very good first quarter team this season. And I think they are 7-3-1 in their last 11 against that first quarter spread. The Bulls are actually the second worst first quarter team in the NBA, and they've been off to their worst starts at home, 13-20 against the first quarter spread. So I might play some Miami early in this one. I think it's like a 1-point first quarter spread.
Matt, seems to me he teed you up nicely there.
Yeah, well, everyone's teed me up nicely here because we already talked about the good matchups for Gabe Vincent and Tyler Hero, and now we're going into Miami trends. And I just think that this line is mispriced in more of a macro sense. The Bulls, to me, are the most overachieving team in the NBA this season. And until they get Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball back, I just don't see this level of winning and production and just ability to mitigate all these defensive issues. I just don't see it continuing. And even though Kyle Lowry is out, this is something I've talked about all season with the Heat. Lowry's a really good player, but Miami has as much depth in the backcourt as anyone. And Vincent and Hero and Max Strus and Duncan Robinson, these guys can fill in just fine. So the line has dropped a little bit where the Heat are only -4.5 right now because Lowry's out. I think it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. So to me, this line should be a bit higher. That's really the main bet that I'm looking at. And then, of course, if Indiana sits a bunch of players, kind of have to be interested in Orlando if we get that situation where guys like Brogdon, Halliburton, Hield, maybe some of them don't play. So it's Miami and then tentatively Orlando, depending what the Pacers do.
Chinmay Veja, first voice, last voice. Where are you betting tonight?
I like Heat, as the other guys have mentioned, for a number of reasons, but I also like Spurs against the spread with the Grizzlies. The Spurs have been really good offensively after the break, and the Grizzlies have struggled a bit. Even with a lot of guys out against the Heat, the Spurs put up almost 130 points. So with those guys coming back with some extended rest, I like them to at least cover the spread here against the Grizzlies.
Chinmay, pretty painless this morning?
Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, I mean, look, none of us are really setting a high bar for you. So come back anytime. We're going to step aside. We'll be back on the sweat in just a moment. Jules will return. We'll do a little college basketball. That's on the way. from the NBA to college basketball. It's dropped down a rung, obviously, on that ladder. Julian Edlow is back with us. We also have Colin Sherwin, who is a DK Nation college sports editor for us. So we thank you for hanging out here with us, Colin. And let's jump into it, guys. We've got, obviously, it was a huge weekend college basketball. Looking back, each of the top 6 ranked teams, they lost on the road, which is incredibly notable. A lot of people shouting out Duke after the fact. Vault them to number 1. Auburn fell to Tennessee. You had Arkansas beat Kentucky. So the Vols, the Razorbacks, the Wildcats, they're all 1 game behind Auburn for the regular season conference title. So before we look ahead to the games tonight, obviously, we still have Auburn as conference favorites at minus 350 here, Jules. Anything this weekend, though, change your mind about that SEC winner?
Not really. Auburn has to slip up again, basically, to let it go, and then it's who can seize it the most. There is a Kentucky game that is still on the docket, I believe. So they and Kentucky will be motivated, coming off that loss to Arkansas. I had Arkansas -2. Ouch, of a push there, but better than 2.5. I think the SEC is unbettable at this point. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be betting things with a week left in the season, because you can find a spot where there's a game that maybe, isn't being factored into the futures price enough and get an edge. So I don't disagree with the theory. I just don't think the SEC is the conference to do it in right now.
So, Colin, I mentioned Auburn. You also have Tennessee plus 400, Arkansas plus 700, Kentucky, who Jules mentioned, at plus 8,000. What stands out to you here?
Unfortunately, I just don't see a path for any of those smaller teams, because Auburn has a 1-game lead and 2 to play. So right now you would need them to lose to Mississippi State, because they're not going to lose on senior day at home. This South Carolina team that is just not in the same league in talent. So you would have to get Auburn to lose at Mississippi State, possible, because MSU's been very good at home this year. But then Arkansas has tiebreak on Auburn, so they could actually still slide in. But their last 2 games are LSU at home and then Tennessee on the road. Just too much of a path there. I think it's too challenging at this point to see them find a way through. So I like the money at Auburn at minus 350. In fact, I think there's probably some value there. Just not really a path forward for anybody else in the SEC right now.
We'll stay with you here, Colin. What else stood out to you from over the weekend, just in general with all these SEC games?
So Baylor getting that huge win at Kansas with Kansas gets back Remy Martin, and only plays 11 minutes, but they did it without JTT and LJ Cryer. So when Baylor gets all of their depth back for the NCAA tournament, I think they're going to be right back in the same position they were last year, which is incredible considering how much turnover they have on that roster. James Akinjo is the kind of guard that wins NCAA tournaments. He's a guy who could create his own shot. He gets teammates involved. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. It's really, what they've done in Waco is just kind of miraculous, to go from last year's team that made the run and to be able to be in position to do that again with all new players is really just incredible. And Gonzaga's loss to me this weekend was an absolute win for the program. Chet Holmgren plays 32 minutes, maybe the best player in the country, one of the top 3 players in the NBA draft. He takes 7 shots. Not good enough against the St. Mary's team that's going to slow you down. And if anybody knows how to beat Gonzaga at St. Mary's, I think it was the check that Gonzaga needed going to the West Coast Conference tournament. So I think that was kind of a win for the program, even though it was a loss on paper.
What about for you, Julian?
Yeah, the Zags lost. They always slip one of these into St. Mary's late in the season, I feel like. I played some St. Mary's plus 10.5. I was too much of a coward to sprinkle on the money line, and it came through. But this probably is a good thing, like Colin said, for them going into the conference tournament. So not that, I think they're going to be around, I don't think it's open on DK Sportsbook yet, but I'm seeing around minus 400 to win the conference tournament. Not that you want to lay that, but you can parlay things. So maybe you consider Gonzaga as a piece of a 2-leg tournament winner parlay if you're going to back some heavy favorites. I agree that they should be in good position there. I did reach out to the DK Sportsbook operations team, so shout out to them on this. Closing numbers for those top 6 ranked teams in the country to lose. 3 of them were actually, 3 of those games weren't upsets from an odds standpoint. They were short favorites, but a $1 parlay on those top 6 teams losing on Saturday would have paid out $273. So whatever, if you're $100 unit better, if you parlayed it, nobody did, but if you did, you're up over 27 grand. Congratulations. Wild college hoop Saturday. It set my takeaway is that it sets up a great last week of the season. I can't wait for next Saturday, and then it's conference tournament week. And I don't know how I'm going to get any work done because I'm going to be watching my TV during the weekdays for weekday noon tip-offs, and it's the best week of the year.
See, and that's before March Madness even really rolls around, too. We're going to have to find a way to get.
Yeah, I'm not going to do any work then either. So
let's look ahead to tonight, guys. You got some big games, couple of them anyway in the Big 12. Let's start Baylor and Texas. Baylor, big win over Kansas back on Saturday. So what bet are you looking at, Jules, here in this one? I'll tell you, it's basically a pick 'em. The Bears, 1-point favorites, the total sitting at 134.5.
I think a little money came in like literally since we started this show with Baylor now at -2 on DK Sportsbook. Baylor's the better team. I want to bet Baylor. I'm picking Baylor to win. I don't think I'm going to bet it because of the hangover spot, especially what they needed to come back and beat Kansas in that Saturday night home game. Now you got to go on the road against a Texas team that personally I don't love. They're all over the place, but they can beat anyone. And it's a big game for them. So I'm picking Baylor to win. I don't think I'm going to get there in terms of betting it, but like Colin was talking about, he's pretty high on this Baylor team. I am too. I'm not telling you they're a bad team, but if they do run into Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, I am interested in Kansas, who smoked them at home the first time around, to bounce back and win that game in the Big 12 tournament.
Baylor or Texas, Colin?
So you tell me who's going to play, and I'll tell you which side I like. JTT and LJ Cryer are going to play for Baylor, and I guess that line moving to -2 makes me think that there might be a go tonight. I like Baylor, and the reason I like Baylor is because they defend at the perimeter really well, and that's something Texas struggles with. Texas will make threes against teams that don't defend well, but teams that really get up and get in your shirt, they really struggle from far. You're going to need to shoot some threes. You're going to need to knock down threes to beat this Baylor team. I don't think they can do it, especially if Baylor's at full strength tonight. So seeing that line move makes me think that they might be. And so I like Baylor here. I like Julian. I don't love this game. I think there's better spots on the board. But if you're going to take it, I would take Baylor. And even if it's 2, I'm still laying 2 if they're full strength.
Right. Well, let's see, Colin, which way you want to go with this one here. You got Texas Tech, another team near the top of the Big 12 standings, obviously. Tough loss most recently to TCU. But home against Kansas State here tonight. The spread, it is 12 on the DK Sportsbook. Is this an easy cover for the Red Raiders?
Kansas State is the American Tourister team. They have checked out immediately. They have packed it up. They are going home. This team has had no desire to play college basketball the rest of the way. They look pretty bad. I'm a little worried about Texas Tech right now as well. Terrence Shannon hasn't really looked great since he got back from injury. That TCU team, though, is playing better right now. Shout out the best SID in America and Steve Schoen. But I'm going to say that this is a spot that I don't love. But Texas Tech is number 2 in the country in adjusted defense. They can really get after it. And against the Kansas State team that does not want to be there and really looks like they've kind of packed it in already. I will take TTU and I will lay the 12, but I don't love it. Again, another spot. It's okay. It's not great.
Jules, I know I'm not here on this show every day, but is that the first SID shout out we've ever had?
Most likely. I can't think of another one that would be in there. This is a tough game. I know Colin's talking down Kansas State, but they're 7-3 against the spread on the road. They're only 4-6 straight up, but they keep covering as dogs on the road. And 12.5, that is a ton of points. Like Texas Tech can still play a great game, win by 10 or 11 points, and bam, K-State covers. So for me, I mean, it does have to, you got to talk up Texas Tech, a perfect 17-0 at home. They're 14-3 against the spread at home. So like they're covering. For me, I like the bounce back spot for Texas Tech. So with big numbers like this, I would generally defer to the first half. Texas Tech comes out, plays with energy off the loss, gets up, call it 10 at halftime, and wins the game by around 10. So rather than mess with the bigger number, I would probably lay the 7 in the first half, but still 7 points first half spread. That's a big number. But that's how I would play it if I got in on this game.
UCLA is a top 15 team in action tonight in Washington. So Jules, what's the bet that you're looking at here? The spread, was once 10 on the DK Sportsbook. It's moved to 8 now for the Bruins as favorites, and also a 140 game total.
Yeah. Colin said that he didn't love the Baylor game necessarily as a bet on this board. I don't love this big Monday board, to be honest. Saturday was the most bets I've had so far this season in college basketball, and I loved that card, and I'm excited about some of these cards down the stretch. This big Monday one isn't particularly one of them. UCLA, I was on them against Oregon and lost. Now you got Johnny Juzang going out mid-game there. That's a huge reason why. Then Juzang's out and UCLA blows doors without him. He's going to remain out. I would say this is where it catches up with them on the road, but Washington's not a very good team. So I don't really have much of a take on this game. Long story short, I know that's boring, and neither team really jumps out from a statistical standpoint. Like Washington is 7-7 against the spread at home. UCLA is 5-6 against the spread on the road. So neither team really performs as well in this spot. This would be a pass for me. If you're building a money line parlay, UCLA should get through. I don't think they're going to lose this game even without Juzang, especially after losing to Oregon. But yeah, not much of a take on this one.
Do you have a take for us, Colin, on the Bruins?
Hope so.
I do. Again, it's going to come down if Juzang plays, and the number being at 8 makes me lean to think that Juzang's not going to be a go tonight.
He was downgraded to doubtful.
Doubtful. Yeah, I saw that. And that's probably a spot where you want to stay away. We have to factor in the Mick Cronin factor here, which if you take out March of 2021, it's Mick Cronin and it's almost March. This is a fade UCLA spot most of the time. But Washington's really, really bad on the defensive glass. And so Jamie Jaquez and Jules Bernard should get a lot of rebounds and should be able to really affect them on the glass, even if UCLA's first shot doesn't go in, their second and their third might. Again, really bad spot. There's better games on the board tonight. There's definitely going to be a lot better games on the board this week. Gun to my head, I take UCLA on the road only because it's 8, but it's not a wonderful spot. These are some games on the board tonight where there's going to be injuries, and the injuries are going to play a huge factor. And sometimes you're just gambling there. Who's going to start and who's not going to start? Keep an eye on Twitter about 5 minutes before tip-off. Might give you some help.
Well, you guys are both transitioning us really well to our last question, which is slate approved pick, because you've told us both you don't love any of the bets, the games available to you tonight. So, Colin, give us a bet that you do like on the DK Sportsbook.
I'm going to give you 2. Coppin State is at home against Delaware State tonight. Delaware State hasn't won a game in the MEAC all year. They're going home. Coppin State needs this win to lock up a spot in the MEAC tournament. It's -11. Coppin should win this game by 20 plus. This is just a really good spot. D-State has hung around some teams this year, kept some games close. They're not going to do that tonight. And they're going to try and get their one win of the year on senior night when they get back home. And plus, Wyoming is getting 1.5 against San Diego State in the elevation in Laramie. One problem, Wyoming hasn't lost a game at home this year. They're undefeated at home and they're getting points at home. This is not the show SDSU. It's a good SDSU team, but this is not one of their better teams. This just seems like a travel spot, a great spot for Wyoming, who still might have a little bit of work to do to get in at large in case they don't win the Mountain West tournament. I like Wyoming at 1.5 here. And if it kicks up to 2, I'm all in.
Jules, wanted to make sure we went to Colin first to give you just a little bit extra time to really scour the DraftKings Sportsbook to find something that you're in favor of tonight.
I'm always scouring. And I agree. I like Wyoming plus 110 on that money line. I think they're going to keep winning at home. So I agree with Colin there. If I bet anything tonight, it would be Wyoming and or Texas Tech first half. But my play here, we're going futures are up. Conference tournament futures are up on DraftKings Sportsbook. So while I don't love anything tonight, the road to the Northeastern Conference runs through the Bryant Bulldogs. Home court advantage in this conference in Rhode Island. Bryant, a co-favorite with Wagner. I like Bryant much more. They're the number 1 overall seed in the conference. Bryant plus 125 to win the Northeast Conference. Giving it to you right here before I even put it on Twitter. It's a big deal, Kaufman. You know that.
Oh, huge.
Bryant plus 125. They're winning that conference.
How many units? You always put your units down there, Julian. How many units?
I do. I reserve the right to change my mind because it's not in text on Twitter. It's nothing crazy. 1.5.
Okay. Like it.
There's a total cop-out answer from Jules, but you know what? It worked.
I literally just gave you my bet. That's my bet.
Oh, you didn't give us something for tonight, but you gave us a bet that exists on the DK.
Well, the tournament starts tonight at 7, so if you don't bet it, you're going to be sitting there being like, "Oh, I should have bet that." I
what could have been. Jules, thanks for hanging out the first half of the show. Colin, appreciate you joining us as well. We're going to step aside. When we return, NHL. That's right, Puck Talk. That's coming up on the Sweat. All right, we are halfway home here on the Sweat. Let's get to a little puck talk. NHL with, of course, a light slate. 3 games available to you in the NHL tonight. Jeff Ulrich is here, DraftKings contributor. We also have Paul Bruno from RotoWire. Guys, good to see you again, always. And let's get into it. DFS talk, NHL opening faceoff for you. Must roster in daily fantasy tonight, Paul.
Well, there's a couple of high-scoring teams that are meeting in Washington, and they're not playing too much attention to details. So I'm all over Austin Matthews right at the top of the board, Adam. And I think it makes sense when you consider that he's on the hottest line in hockey right now, and he's rolling 17 points in his last 10 games played, averaging over 20 DraftKings points a game. And Washington is leaking goals just like the Leafs too. So I think you can even make a case for his line mate, Mitch Marner, similarly with 17 points. If you want to look at the Boston-LA game, a couple of tempting options in the Boston top line. David Pastrnak scoring at a very high rate, 11 points and 43 shots on goal his last 10 outings, $8,000 a price tag. And Brad Marchand is back, but only $7,500. It might be the best value of all the 4 of those guys.
You want to talk Bruins top liners, Jeff? Jake Debresque points in 4 straight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a fair point because he's playing alongside Bergeron and Marchand, which, makes those guys cheaper to roster as well. And my must roster would be Brad Marchand. I mean, at 7,500, Paul mentioned, the cheapness and price compared to guys like Ovechkin and even his own teammate, David Pastrnak. But I mean, he's the one who's playing alongside Patrice Bergeron. He's got 15 shots on net over his last 2 games, does Brad Marchand. And, he's taking on a Kings team who they're sure they've won like 5 or 6 in a row. They've been beating up on like Arizona. This is a team that's got the 5th worst penalty kill in the league. There's a lot of upside here for this Bergeron Marchand duo. So I really like starting with those 2. I would make it like a pair here. Those 2 are the must plays. I think you need to start there because the Boston offense looks good. And I think they're going to catch the Kings well off guard tonight.
2 streaky teams. Bruins have won 4 in a row, Kings 5 in a row. And let's look at value tonight here. DFS still, of course, Jeff. And there's a former Bruin, Dougie Hamilton's in a really great spot for his club for New Jersey tonight. TJ Oshie is certainly well priced as well. So who do you like?
I do like TJ Oshie. I mean, Paul mentioned the Washington Capitals, issues on defense. And I mean, it's true. Like their goaltending's not good, but I mean, like, let's talk about the Leafs for a sec, because their goaltenders can't stop anything. I mean, they essentially blew a 5-goal lead in last game. Yeah, they got bailed out by Austin Matthews and their offense, but this Leafs team right now, without Jake Muzzin, looks like they cannot stop a thing. And I think TJ Oshie being back, he's averaged over 19 minutes in his first 2 games. He's getting top line power play minutes alongside Ovechkin. I think Oshie is a very, very good value, just like a one-off play too at 3,600. And I mean, look, Elias Pettersson, for some reason, continues to get salaried under $5,000, like well under $5,000 at 4,400, taking on the Devils, who, I mean, they've allowed 4 or more goals in 7 of the last 9 games. It's a great matchup against the Devils. Their goaltending's one of the weakest in the league as well. So Pettersson, very efficient. He's playing like 15, 16 minutes a night, but averaging over 13 DraftKings minutes over his last 10 games. He's a great value too.
Whenever I'm here, I like to give Paul a ridiculous value play for the evening just to see how it goes. What do you think of Tyler Mott tonight?
There's too many other sweet ones on the board. I like that one, but not as much as the ones I'll mention. I mean, we've touched on a couple. Look at the NHL is not dominated by complete forward lines that are 1 through 3 awesome, but there's usually a guy that's a little weaker than the other 2 guys, at least on paper. And we touched on one already in Jake Debresque. He's got right wing minutes on that top line, disrespected at $3,300. He's got 4 goals in his last 4 games played in that spot. And tonight looks like a great opportunity again. And Michael Bunting is making a case to upset rookie scoring voting this year. He's 26 years old and he qualifies as a rookie. And he's leading them among goal scorers because he's playing with the big boys in Toronto. He's priced at $5,000. We mentioned Elias Pettersson. I agree with Jeff. This is a total disrespect for a guy who's one of the best talents straight up in the entire league. $4,400. He's got his game together with 14 points in his last 10. And Nico Hischier on the other side, similarly profiled low for my money and DK's money, $4,200 for a guy who's got 9 points in his last 10 games, playing top 6 minutes in power play there. There's a lot of great value below the 5,000 mark tonight.
All right, so that's DFS. How about DraftKings Sportsbook? Pablo, we'll stay with you, my man. Canucks Devils, is there a favorite bet within this game for you?
It's a bit of a toss-up, but I like the way Vancouver's playing more than I do Jersey. The Canucks are 7-3, while the Devils are 3-7. That's enough for me to go to the money line and say take the plus 105 over there. I think the better goaltending and defensive structure in Vancouver makes me lean in that direction.
Jeff?
Yeah, Vancouver coming off like a game last night, you always worry a little bit about that, but both of these teams are really hard to trust. The Canucks have been super up and down, but it looks like Thatcher Demko has bounced back. And the Devils, who knows what you're getting from their goaltenders? They might score 5 goals, but allow 8 again. And the Canucks offense has looked pretty good of late. We just finished talking about Pettersson a lot. So I pretty much on the same page as Paul here. This one took me a little bit longer to get on, but I think there's definite value with just taking the Canucks at the money line. If you're looking at the player props for this one, I don't mind Dougie Hamilton to score a point either. He's minus 105. His minutes are only going to go up, and the Canucks do have the worst penalty kill in the league. So Dougie Hamilton to score a point looks like good value in the player props.
Moose, we were talking about TJ Oshie before in that Leafs-Caps game. What about a favorite bet for you within that one?
Yeah, I think you can keep targeting TJ Oshie here. I don't mind about minus 150 to go over 1.5 shots on goal. Again, he's played over 19 minutes in his last 2 games. The Leafs, obviously a weaker defense. I think that's a fine prop, even at those lower odds. But I look at this game, and again, I'm not really sure if I want to trust the Capitals. I mean, they have the similar issues to the Leafs, but I think Alex Ovechkin to score a goal tonight at plus money is fine. Plus 100. We know the Leafs are going to let some goals in. Whether they end up outscoring the Capitals, you guys can figure that out. I'll just stick with the player props in this one. I'll go Ovi to score a goal, and I'll go Oshie over 1.5 shots on goal.
Well, we couldn't possibly not talk Leafs with Paul when he's here. Look at that logo right next to his left ear. What do you have tonight?
Well, you know what? You got to hammer the over here. So Adam, I like to go to the alternate total goals in a situation like this. I don't see how they stay under 7.5. That'll pay 230. So I think that's one of the best bets on the whole slate tonight. The Caps, I believe Ovechkin gets really fired up for games against Toronto and Montreal. He knows there's a national audience here that wants to see him, and he wants to put on a show, and he often does. He has one of the best points per game against Leafs as compared to any other team in the league. And yet you see the Leafs play a game against Minnesota, 2 teams with high octane offenses. They shut each other down. So do we really know what to expect? No, but odds to me favor a shootout tonight. So I'm going to take the over big time here.
I mentioned earlier, something's got to give between the Bruins and Kings, both these teams entering the game with winning streaks, Paul. So favorite bet for you in this one?
I think the Bruins are just a better team, and they have a better defensive structure than the Kings right now. Kings have been playing fairly well on the season, but their game slipped a little bit. I think the Bruins are going the other way, so I'm leaning on them. I take them minus 1.5 for a plus 195 payoff on the puck line tonight.
Moose?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely on the same page in this one. No, I'm not going to go fancy with any props or anything. It's just Bruins straight up money line, minus 125. The Kings, I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, the only reason this line is even this close is because the Kings have won 6 in a row. But those wins, go back and check who they beat. There's no one of note. I think the Coyotes are in there twice. There's a couple other weak teams. The Kings have the 5th worst penalty kill in the league. They don't have a good power play. They're going to get demolished on special teams here with Marchand back. Jeremy Swayman is also very good on the road. If you look at his road splits, the Bruins are 16-4 over the last 20 games on the road. I like the Bruins at minus 125 here. It's my favorite bet of the night.
All right. Well, let's take it home here with this one. Slate approved pick. Favorite bet on the board tonight, Jeff. Anything across the DK Sportsbook,
Yeah.
Obviously in the NHL category. Who is it?
And obviously, spoiler alert. I just let the cat out of the bag, but I do like the Bruins money line at minus 125. I think Paul is right. You could actually go to the puck line here at plus 195 if you want to take the extra risk. That's up to you. But I think the Bruins are definitely like the side to be on. Again, Swayman, excellent road record, 7-2-2 in 11 road starts this year. He's been hot of late. The Bruins offense is picking up. The rolling 2 lines again. I think the Kings are going to get overwhelmed here.
Paul?
You know what? I think I'm going to take a look at a special bet that I kind of thought was kind of neat. Looking at the sum of all 3 games, the line is set at 17.5 total goals. That's an average of less than 6 for the 3 games. I don't see how a couple of them stay anywhere close to 6. So even though it's only a minus 130, I think that's the way I'm going to go tonight for maybe the easiest money on the board tonight. I think there's going to be a couple of shootouts.
Well, we had Jules here for the first half of the show. We're going to keep Jeff around for the second half of the show. Paul, we'll bid you adieu. We thank you for hanging out here with us. Sweat coming back. A little PGA talk on the way.
Way better second half then.
we've got one last segment to go here on the Sweat. We bring back Jeff Ulrich, and we're going to talk all golf, all PGA, and all Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill the rest of the way. So, saddle up or strap on in or whatever it is. Get comfortable, because this is what we're going to do here. We got breaking news here, Jeff, just in the last minute or so. Bryson DeChambeau, DraftKings own, of course, he won this event last year, hasn't played on the tour since the Farmers, where he missed the cut. Not a great start to 2022 for him, and he is withdrawn from this tournament. So what is that affecting most in your eyes?
Well, it's affecting my season-long fantasy golf team, which has Bryson on it. But it's affecting the odds right now. I think that's the biggest thing. If you got some early bets in today, you probably got a lot better odds on, especially guys like in that mid-range, like a Fitzpatrick, maybe a Leishman, maybe an Adam Scott or a Paul Casey. Like, I mean, Bryson obviously is a top player in this field, he's a top 15 player in the world, and with him out, I mean, everyone's odds just kind of dip down a little bit. They get compressed, right? So something to think about, like the odds you were getting an hour ago, they're not the odds you're getting right now. And for DFS purposes too, I mean, I don't, the salaries aren't out yet, but I mean, it's going to be the similar effect, right? I mean, certain guys who maybe you thought you were going to get for like 8K this week, they're going to be more expensive. So the price has gone up, unfortunately, with no Bryson. It's too bad. I was ready to talk about what a value he was going to be at, like plus 2,800, but clearly he's not ready to go yet, because pretty sure that this is injury related. We know Bryson is an absolute, mechanic and loves to just a guy who's just really into his preparation. And if he's not prepared, he's not going to go. So obviously there's something still wrong.
Well, potential value and significant value. Let's talk Sepp Straka, man, because he is plus 10,000 on the DraftKings Sportsbook to go out for another win at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He is plus 700 for a top 10. You chasing or fading him this weekend?
I actually don't mind this for a top 10. I know the feeling with most people as well. He's coming off his first win. There's gonna be a hangover. You can't bet guys like this, but I mean, look, we had this scenario 2 years ago with Keith Mitchell. I mean, another Georgia Bulldog. These guys are teammates. These guys are like really good friends. And Keith Mitchell was in the form of his life. And guess what he did after winning the Honda Classic? He came to the Arnold Palmer and finished sixth. He was in contention. And I think there's a real chance here. This field isn't that strong. Yeah, I know John Rahm and Rory are here, but like after those two, it tails off quick, especially with Bryson out. So this is almost a very similar field to what we're getting last week. You've got Sepp Straka coming in here in the form of his life right now. And I mean, I think for a top 10 plus 700, I'm actually surprised. I mean, you're getting better odds on him than a guy like Chris Kirk, who he beat straight up last week. Luke List, Lanto Griffin. I mean, these are all players like, Sepp Straka is, again, coming off a week at the Honda. And these courses also very similar in terms of just what they demand. You've got to hit pressure approach shots over water. I mean, Sepp Straka was doing that all week last week. So I think these are very fair odds for a top 10. Again, I'm not going to hit him out to like win twice in a row, but absolutely, man. If you want to take a shot on him, I think the odds are more than fair. Surprised to see him that high, to be honest.
Sungjae Im was a favorite at the Honda Classic. Didn't go so well, obviously, Jeff. He is plus 2,200 to bounce back and win this thing. Do you feel good about that? Chase or fade him?
So, interestingly enough, I was kind of ready to say, like, you could think about Sungjae this week, but with Bryson in the field and bigger odds, I'm not sure how you take Sungjae over Bryson. Now Bryson's not in the field, and Sungjae Im is still plus 2,200. I mean, I think of it, if anything, like the Bryson DeChambeau withdrawal, it really makes Sungjae Im look just a lot better. I mean, from a betting perspective, I mean, this is a player who lots of experience playing in Florida. He's got really good results. Obviously has a win at the Honda Classic, which, like I said, PJ National and Bay Hill, they do demand similar stuff from their players. Sungjae Im, multiple top finishes out the Arnold Palmer too. And there's one thing I've already thrown this out on Twitter, but the winners here, Kaufman, they have experience playing at Bay Hill. And it's not just experience, it's experience getting in the mix. Sungjae Im, a top 5 finish here a couple of years back. That's what most of the past recent winners have done. They've gotten in the mix at Bay Hill before they win. I really like Sungjae at plus 2,200. I think the only reason his odds are even this high this week because he's coming off a missed cut, but he does everything well. He's got the kind of game to compete on these tougher major championship-like courses. And I think these are more than fair odds this week to take a shot with him.
Tyrell Hatton plus 2,800 on the DK Sportsbook to win this thing. He won in 2020, which safe to say was a memorable year for every other reason. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, Hatton, obviously a former winner, and another guy whose game, tee to green, he can handle these tougher courses. We've seen him in like a final pairing of the U.S. Open or up there in the U.S. Open before as well. My biggest problem with Hatton is just, he hasn't done that much over in Europe, and this is going to be his first start over on the mainland USA on the PGA Tour this year. Now, we've seen that work out for Euro players quite a bit here, but I mean, we also have seen like typically those guys were doing something on the other tour, like getting in contention, maybe even picking up a win. It just doesn't really seem to be clicking for Hatton right now. And quite frankly, like going back to the fall of last year too, it really hasn't been clicking for Hatton for a while. I mean, missing the cut of the last two majors, doing nothing in the playoffs. I think the only reason he's really available at plus 2,800 this week is just respect for a former past champion. I'm not really interested at all. I wish Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's at plus 2,000 right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook, was bigger in odds, because that would be 100% my target. But you know what? If I'm picking between those two, I'll take the lower odds on Matthew Fitzpatrick. I don't care. I think Fitzpatrick is way closer to winning right now. He's got a great record at this event too. So, Hatton plus 2,800. He's bigger odds than Fitzpatrick. I can see why some people might just say I'm taking the value there, but I think Fitzpatrick is the better play this week. And I think you just got to pay up. I think you just got to hold your nose and do it. I know plus 2,000 for Matthew Fitzpatrick doesn't sound great. This guy's got a high caliber game too, and he's been in way better form than Hatton.
Jeff, Mark Leishman, also plus 2,800, not unlike Hatton. Matter of fact, you look back at history. I mean, he finished second in 2020 to Hatton. He won this event in 2017. So you chasing or fading him here?
Yeah, and I mean, another player at this range who I would happily get on over Hatton. I mean, Mark Leishman, also an ambassador for this event. He's really taken to it. So this is it's almost like another major for Mark Leishman every year. You mentioned, he's not only got the win, but he's got a bunch of top finishes, and that is typically what we've seen from winners here. They get themselves in contention. This is a tough course. You really got to kind of figure your way around it. You can't take too many chances. You'll blow up too quick. You've got to understand how to play the par fives. Some of them offer you some good risk reward, but others, when you get in certain spots, you've got to kind of just take your medicine. And Leishman knows how to do that. He's been trending well this year. He's gained strokes on approach, over a stroke on approach in 5 straight starts now, coming off a couple top 16 finishes. If I'm looking at this range, we've mentioned Sungjae. I mentioned I like Matthew Fitzpatrick, but Mark Leishman, I wish his odds were bigger too, because he's right there with Hideki Matsuyama, but it's hard for me to say he shouldn't be a target for you. So kind of just pick your poison in this range. If I had to rank them, I would go start with Fitzpatrick, even though his odds are the lowest, but Leishman would probably be my second guy. So a lot of interesting names in this range. I think that you can make a lot of cases for guys, with Jon Rahm such short odds and with Bryson no longer being in the field. I think this is a range people are really going to gravitate to. Like I said, Hideki there too. Leishman's certainly in the mix, and he's been playing well, and I will not be shocked if he gets himself in the mix again this week.
In about 30 seconds here, Jeff, you mentioned Jon Rahm. He is the favorite, plus 750. Are the odds too short on him?
Yeah, I mean, typically the odds on Jon Rahm are just going to be too short. I mean, when sports books are putting out odds, obviously, sometimes there's guys who just look like they're a little bit overvalued, but with the top players, it's rare that the sports books are going to make a huge mistake and get try to get too much action on a guy like Jon Rahm. Plus 750. This field isn't that strong, like I said, and I wouldn't be shocked if Jon Rahm came here and maybe just blew the doors off. He likes tough courses. He really does. He loves Memorial for that reason, but this is his first time playing Bay Hill. And the big trend here has been past winners. They've typically played this event multiple times. They've typically got themselves in contention multiple times before actually closing the door here. If you're playing Jon Rahm, I would probably play the plus 190 for a top 5. I think, as I just mentioned, I mean, he likes the tough courses. I think this setup he'll find appealing, but it's his first time. And I'm not going to trust him for a win at under plus 1,000 because he's plus 750 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. And yeah, that is too short.
If you like what you've heard from Jeff, oh boy, do I have news for you. He's coming on back later on the slate with Brendan Glasheen. That is available for you on the DraftKings Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch pages after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim. So right around 5:15 Eastern time, I'm sure plenty more golf talk, NHL, whatever it is these guys feel like hitting on. Moose, we thank you very much. And there are Madden Sims coming your way throughout the day here on the DraftKings social channels. The next one, the first of this day, noon Eastern, just a few minutes from now. Thank you to Undercover Boss Tom, our technical director, Drew, our producer, and everyone who is part of this program. I am Adam Kaufman. The Sweat, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Join us again tomorrow. We'll see you later.